Alright, I'm gonna call the August 26th Canterbury Planning Board meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to move that till after we do the continuation of the 114 West Road hearing? Alright, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Alright. Continuation of 114 West Road. So you have new plans that were submitted?
Yes.
Alright, and I'll leave it to you to introduce everything and go through
Are
what you
they
want.
new plans different from June 3rd plans?
Correct.
Oh, yes.
They're on the website for this meeting and they also were in the email.
I didn't know they were different, so I didn't do
Gotcha.
anything with.
Generally, they're the same, but, so for the record, Sam Foisey with Meridian Land Services. A quick, point of information, I have to admit that I had an error in my overall, acreage from the previous one. It was a carryover from the original subdivision that created this lot where a couple acres, 2 acres, went to the parcel out front. So the overall acreage is, 34 acres and some change, which then adjusts the open space calculation, and then it also adjusts the density calculation downwards, so you'd be happy to hear that our unit count has gone down. Just wanna make that known, and that was found from Keith taking a look at the plans, as well as during our value engineering changes to the plans, it was noticed and caught. So generally, we left the last meeting with some items that we needed to, or I would call some homework that we needed to do. One of those items being open space, going before the Conservation Commission and discussing potential uses within the open space and receiving their comments. Other items being looking for potential commercial uses to hopefully find some commercial uses that could go along with this subdivision or follow immediately after. And then my homework from Keith was, again, value engineer it, which the original design had a lot of fill on this section of the roadway here when it was hanging over, so that has been dropped down. And the means of doing that, I believe, offers a benefit to the future residents here of the view over the wet meadow, as well as reducing the amount of fill and the amount of infrastructure that needs to come in. So right now it is actually a net zero site, so there won't be any truck traffic to import fill with the exception of construction materials and then select materials for road bases and so on. So with that, again, commercial uses. We took that to heart and we've actually put together some conceptual plans to understand what could go on both of these lots. And you've all seen this one, which is the potential for a coffee shop. This one's actually a mimic of Starbucks's, I think it's their concept B model, with a smaller building, but mostly drive-through dependent. I also have taken a look at this front one, and I could fit about 5,800 square feet of office / retail, depending on what you would use there. That building could also be used as a restaurant, however, septics would really need to be looked into to confirm that could be used, and I'll submit all these concepts later on, but I
Is
imagine.
this commercial spot the one on the road or the one in interior?
This is the one on the road.
Right by the exit.
So kind of moving on to the back, which I would say is the potential for the higher value given the size of the property. We've all seen this one before, which is modeled after vault storage and outdoor storage, showing that you could fit quite a bit on here. And we'll get to the vault storage later on. We've received some letters from a resident, I believe also the town clerk, of is there any type of recreational uses that could fit here? And the answer is yes. This is taken from Meridian is currently working on a project for the town of Amherst for a soccer field and pickleball courts and basketball courts. So we're pretty familiar with what is required to put a sports facility or sports fields here, and it could fit, and if that's something that the town would like to work with the applicants here, they'd be willing to do so.
Is that in lieu of the commercial?
That's in lieu of the commercial, it was to address that abutters letter of, I don't wanna say wishing, but wishing that something could go there similar to that, and the answer is yes, it can, it just, if the right economics are there for the town to purchase the property, I'm sure Keith would be happy to make that work. This is just a simple office building conceptual plan with showing one building being 1,800 square feet, and a second building being another 1,800 square feet of office space, or sorry, thank you Keith, 18,000 for both buildings, so there is high potential here, just if the market can demand it, there is potential for it to go here.
Do you wanna put up the sign on that?
Yeah, so with that being said, we also included a billboard sign, and the way that this came up is Volt Storage, who is one of the concepts that we modeled this after, we have started conversations with them. They actually have, and you can see it here, a billboard sign that is located at one of their facilities. In those conversations, and with Keith's due diligence here, this is a use that could go in today, just a matter of if it would be allowed by the town. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eli, I'm not specific, is it allowed by right or what needs to happen?
I'm not sure, I haven't looked into the possibility of doing a large format sign here. I would imagine that your zoning ordinance has some restrictions on size as well as other aspects of this. I did help Charlie Morgan, the owner of Vault, permit that sign, get DOT permits, and then multiple variances for location next to the right of way and some other things based on frontage, etc. But this is another location that's pretty similar to that, and that abuts the FE Everett Turnpike, but it's the frontage that you access that building is on 3, and you can't see this sign from anything inside the property, or like you only see it when you drive by. It's really set up so that no one on the other side on the road knows that it's here, and that would be the same general idea. And again, we're very early talking concepts because we understand that the board wants to see commercial uses here. So the idea of pitching this just conceptually is that it has the multiple benefit of you can advertise Canterbury things, you can advertise any national brand, whatever the case may be. It gets taxed as an installation on the property, so you're making money like that. And then also they do have a use for, the town often has reserved time, and that's something that can be negotiated. So if you have Old Home Day or whatever the case is, it can show up on that board in a rotation, as well as an override for things like amber alerts and silver alerts. So it's just another option that, while we're trying to consider what an actual developed use for this property is, there's an opportunity for commercial that could go in pretty close to instantaneously, which I know is important to the board.
Yeah, and similar to that scenario, it's I know I'm gonna reiterate something that Eli said, it's virtually zero impact to the town, where it's on the outskirts of town, it's on 93, it's quiet, and there could be additional benefits to the town instead of beyond just tax revenue. And I just threw down two of these concepts just to understand how allowing a billboard doesn't really subtract from the overall potential of the property. I believe assisted living was mentioned at one point in time. This is a footprint of an assisted living facility in Milford, adjacent to where our offices are. It easily fits on the property here, with plenty of parking, plenty of space. Again, if the market demands it, there is room for a potential use like this. And then, while probably unlikely, it is an allowed use within the zoning ordinance of having a hotel. However, it would be obviously restricted to your 40-foot height restriction. But we put one in that was 5 stories, again, just to reiterate that there's plenty of room here. If you put a 5-story hotel in, there's plenty of room for parking. They're not saying that this one is realistic, but there are some potentials for the other ones, and again, we threw the billboard in there just to show that even a intense use like a hotel has room for a billboard to remain there.
Why isn't that realistic?
Usually hotels are in destinations, so it's more realistic for market demand, not for site constraints. So I would say if Canterbury had a attraction that would attract people to the area from out of town, then I would say it would be realistic. So just kind of to reiterate on the commercial uses, within phase one of this project, we are looking to create the front pad to have a pad-ready site that will have water sub to it and drainage sub to it, so the only thing that it would need to do is essentially build the site out and install the septic. It creates a very favorable location for some business to go there, and like I said, a coffee shop could go there, a office building could go there somewhere in the 5,000 to 6,000 square feet, a retail building could go there, and with some considerations on septic loading, a restaurant has potential to go there, but there is adequate room for the building as well as parking and site access. So bringing us to open space and the uses that would be allowed within the open space area. I believe this board seemed to be favorable for stormwater to be located in the buffer, or not the buffer, the open space. Also seemed to be favorable about the well and the pump house to be located in there. When we went to the Conservation Commission, the only item that they kind of had pushback on was the pump house and potentially the access path. However, when we remove that from our calculations and we don't, and we include our stormwater basins, we are at 18 acres where we need about 17 acres of open space. And we believe that has support of the Conservation Commission per their letter, or their comment letter. And we also would hope that the board here would find that favorable. So with that, that's generally the changes that have occurred, the homework that we've done in the short month that we've been away from you guys, and we hope that we've made progress in the right direction to where we can keep this ball rolling forward.
Right, any questions from the board? And I think one of the other things that we haven't talked about now that we have a more firm plan is any studies that might be required, any questions on the changes, the revised calculation, anything like that?
To be clear, so the only thing you're asking to include in the conserved area is the infiltration ponds.
Yes, the stormwater management basins, and the thought process behind that is it's a passive use. They're set lower, it really doesn't obstruct the view of the area and negatively impact the view from the public.
I just, to clarify, I think the road and the pump house are still within that area, they're just not, their area is not calculated, so in terms of a contiguous area, it's still located in.
Yes, visually it will be within it, but
Right.
it's not within the calculation area.
On this plan for the access road, I think one of the Conservation Commission's questions was how you were planning on constructing the access road and whether or not it would be a pervious, lower impact road. Is that,
You're talking about the access road to the pump house?
to the pump house, yeah.
Right now it's gravel, however, it really just needs to be in a state where you can actually access it to do maintenance on the pump house, so that could be similar to when you see kind of a woods road and you end up with grass between, you just see kind of the tire marks, and it would be constructed as gravel, and then you could probably just let it kind of go, and it will just kind of, as long as it has a hard pan for a vehicle to make it over it. So it will start out as gravel, it may become less visually impactful as it's
more.
depending on how it's maintained.
And did you have a list of proposed allowed uses within the open space?
This is really all we're looking to do.
Sorry, I meant in terms of what people can use the open
Recreation?
space for, yeah.
I would say foot traffic, so we're not looking to have foot traffic and maybe, I could see a kid riding their bike around there, but we don't want any motorized vehicles through there. I think that came up from, the question that was asked of us at the conscom was, is a playground gonna go in there? And the answer is no.
Would a playground be prohibited in the condo documents, or if the residents wanted to put one there,
I think it would
it would
be,
be prohibited?
yes. 'Cause that would be a disturbance in construction unless the board, unless you want.
We'd have to specifically allow something, which we could do.
Yeah, I think, speaking for
Considering you
Keith,
might
probably that we'd be willing
cause
to
a
listen
wetland.
if there was an alternative course there that the board preferred. I don't know that regarding a playground of some reasonable size, we have any strong feelings either way.
I saw in the minutes also that there was mention of a barrier, a fence behind the condos to delineate between the open space and the development. Is that something that,
Yeah, that's something that we're agreeable to. We discuss, instead of a typical chain link fence, to do like a split rail.
yeah,
And maybe have it broken up, in segments. So you can still walk through it, but you know that that's where your backyard ends.
also down about delineating where the that second, phase 2 commercial,
This lot here.
yeah,
That we actually said a chain link fence would make sense there, because it being a commercial use, you actually wanna use the fence to kind of hold in any trash that is generated. Well, sites today are more clean than others, you never know when a dumpster load's gonna get blown open, and that's just one more way of protecting the resource adjacent to it.
especially where there's some time frame between the phases. You wanna delineate that acreage, so that is,
Yeah.
It would be
Maintained.
delineated on the plan. I don't know if we would be installing that fence at with this phase. We can delineate it with essentially property markers, like an iron pipe or something like that. But I would request that would be made like a condition of the site plan approval, whenever that phase is constructed.
So it's still your intent to phase this as residential first?
Yes,
Well, front first, including that coffee shop style pad out front.
yeah, with a flat building pad ready to go out front.
Billboard.
And then if the billboard can go, it's looking like there's some legs to that, compared to the other uses.
Would be normal on any kind of major subdivision to have a town engineer review, third-party review, which we're talking about, town engineer review, probably code compliance review, review of traffic situation about is there a turning lane required? Maybe very often there are other things. So I would propose that we request at least those 3 areas to be reviewed by third party.
Sorry, can you
I agree with that, particularly if you're eyeing something that can be used as a drive-through coffee shop. You're not just attracting residents, you're attracting people pulling off the highway. What kind of congestion might that create?
That was that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to traffic review, we're more than willing to provide a traffic memo. In fact, we already have a draft one in our possession, but we just need to kind of get this unit count down or kind of button down before we can issue the final, cause he really doesn't wanna see a draft go out and then be changing it. The same thing is true with the fiscal study. We have that in hand, it's just, we're not ready to issue it until we have, I guess, definitive direction on the bonus densities. To your statement, I'm very familiar with third-party review of site plans and subdivisions, and it's actually pretty common, and it's a more abnormal not to have it, so we're agreeable to that, with the exception of it's DOT jurisdiction, so I really don't like when we overlap jurisdictions, where we would be seeking a DOT driveway permit, so I would leave the traffic to DOT, then anything on site, I would agree that a third-party engineer should review it.
Rich, the second one you mentioned was code compliance, so you're just envisioning that going through building inspector in town and just having them review, not a third party, I'd imagine, for.
Well, actually, it's a common thing that Central Regional Planning Service that they offer, but there are also other third parties that offer it. Central Regional Planning also has engineer on staff that they use for this kind of thing. But I'm not promoting, I'm not saying we should use them. I think there have been times when I think board members have felt that we should be looking other places than just Central Regional Planning, so, but.
I'm less familiar with code compliance review, like what does that entail? Is this-
Reviewing the code and the project and pointing out,
Like reviewing the zoning ordinance or reviewing life safety code, like
no.
the ordinance?
Ordinance and regulation.
I would extend that further, I think our fire people in town mentioned, yeah, at least a cistern for fire suppression, and given the flammability and toxicity of modern building methods, fire suppression in each unit. So, and that's not quite I'm not sure that's a building, I'm not sure that's an ordinance thing or a building code thing. But if there was an outside review, I would add those things to it.
I haven't seen any information from the fire chief yet, but we do have placeholders available if there's a fire cistern, however, when it comes to sprinkler system, it's not required for single family and duplexes, but I can address that directly with the fire chief, but.
I have a question about the building, the Canterbury's building cap, at 4%, I think, and whether in the event that this is approved and that number is, whatever exactly the number is, does that impact the building cap? Will you have to do it over 2 years rather than one, or seek a variance? How does that figure into things?
We're aware that there is that regulation, however, we don't fully understand it yet to be able to comment directly on it, and we'd rather for this project to get approved first before we address it, because that's at time of building permit is when that would be addressed, correct?
I mean, other towns, the way when these things exist, they build in phases, you know, you build 10 one year and 10 the next, or whatever, and
Anyway, I think that a lot of this depends on our numbers in terms of the final project tally, et cetera, so like we said, we are aware of it, and we'll figure out sort of a more concrete answer to how we'll handle that as we understand our density.
It's a great problem to have, right? If you sell all the units that quickly, then we'll address the problem. If it doesn't happen that quickly, then it's a non-issue. Then it's a non-issue, so we'll essentially address the issue when it's an issue.
How many units are you at in this current iteration?
We're at 34 with including 2 commercial,
Okay. 32 residential.
yes.
the 2 commercial are one on the road and one behind.
Yes.
Wasn't there a room for another commercial on the road, or am I mixing that up?
At one point, we were trying to talk with the abutter about acquiring some more frontage along the road. But those conversations didn't go far enough along because. And then, I don't wanna keep going back to the billboard, but, we don't fully understand how the billboard affects this application, but that might be one additional commercial unit subtracting from a residential unit.
One second. Alright, so we have, is Rich is, I'm sorry, Craig has flagged studies, we're gonna have to decide on that piece. The other piece is total number of units. Do you have a, or I guess can you provide us some point, an updated unit calculation, page 4 of the revised plans? It looked like the
Yeah, so.
starting number was updated, but the
So
other
I have
numbers were
I
not.
have a revised one, which I'll submit to you, to staff later tonight.
And that still is proposing a 15% bonus, correct?
That is correct. So the gross property area is 34.37, the subtracted wetland areas is 5.09, bringing the net tract area to 29.28, which brings a base density unit count of 29.28. Applying a 15% density bonus is 4.39, which brings a total to 33.37, which per the regulation rounds up to 34.
What happens if the back unit, somebody decides, I'm gonna take this unit and I'm gonna put in a couple little offices, a physical therapy office, a dentist office, a lawyer's office, accountant's office. That's still one unit. And one vote in the condo board.
It's one ownership. So those offices couldn't be individually owned, they would have to be owned by one person or one entity, and then lease out those or under the umbrella of that entity.
If I wanted to be a commercial unit in that back space and, you know, I'm an accountant and the other guy's a dentist or something like that, that would give each of those commercial uses half a vote, or, you know, total of one vote in your condominium arrangement. And given that this is zoned commercial, the interests of the commercial owners are greatly subsumed to the interests of the residentials, assuming there's some difference of opinion. And this troubles me because I have one vote up front, and if there's two businesses, yeah, half a unit, half a vote each, or something like that, or three of the, you know, a third of the vote each. And given that this is commercial, it feels very upside down to me, the power relationship between the residential and the commercial. And if this were zone commercial, or residential, that wouldn't be bothersome at all. But the fact that it's zone commercial, and the interests of the commercials are so are minorized by the ownership arrangements. You know, when it comes to paving the road or whatever the interests are going to be, difference between residentials and commercials. I mean, I know I've expressed this in the past in different ways, but I find them very troublesome.
Mr. Chair, if I can address that. I certainly understand the comment that the numbers are balanced toward more units being used for commercial, sort of regardless of the square footage of the property. I think there are ways to draft around that concern. I think that we can, obviously condominium docs are gonna get reviewed by this board. We can bolster how certain aspects that might be pitfalls, the road maintenance, et cetera, such that that commercial unit in the back and that commercial unit in the front, that we can balance these things to that end. And then I also think that, well, yes, if we have the unit owners in the front talking about a swing setup there that has nothing to do with the back, there's still also the opportunity that if we put up an office building that has those 5 or 6 different uses that we talked about, you could also sort of have building bylaws that are a separate piece of that this is how these commercial uses work together. And obviously those have no bearing on what the duplex does next to the single family, because they're not gonna be concerned about, we don't put our trash outside in this building, like. So there are things that will overarch for the entire parcel, and then there are things that can be designed and better subjective for those uses. So as we get a little bit further on with figuring out how we wanna do the commercial, we can certainly draft to try to alleviate some of those concerns.
Like, for instance, if you have a shared driveway, and you have a maintenance agreement on it, one person might benefit from 1,000 feet of that shared driveway, one person might benefit from 100 feet of that shared driveway. You can draft the maintenance agreement in such a way, so that way the person that benefits from 1,000 feet has their proportional share of costs associated with maintaining the driveway, and then similar to the person that has 100 feet of that driveway.
You're talking about between the two commercial uses.
Well, I'm talking about, I'm using that as an example of there's a legal mechanism, and in this case, it would be the condo documents, to be able to protect the interests of the commercial properties and not have them outvoted by the majority.
And that also works here as well, that if you're buying one of these units in the front, you may have a concern of there's an extra 1,000 feet or whatever of commercial driveway, how is that going to affect me? So that it benefits everybody for the condo docs to be adequately drafted, so that they know if you're that first unit and you're using a little bit of the property, you're paying your 1/32 share of the residential piece, but you're not fundamentally subsidizing that back commercial or vice versa, and we can figure these things out as we get a little further along and raise the concerns, and again, have our unit breakdown, can figure out ways, cause it's absolutely a fair question to raise, and we see what you're saying on that.
Question, you said, we build the office, but what are you building on that back lot? Cause you're showing us what you're building in the residential, or are you just leaving that open to someone buying it?
It again comes down to what the market will bear on that, it's an opportunity, so again, and I have no idea how a billboard is going over in this room, and that's something that we can put up relatively quickly, it takes DOT permit, et cetera, but have that, and then as someone comes and says build to suit, if we have the person who says, I've always loved soccer fields, I want this to be a soccer field, here's the money for a soccer field, great. Or if it's someone like Charlie Morgan and Vault Storage and they decide they want that, we can build that. It's hard for us to dictate what the market will want here, other than to get this thing divided such that we have this marketable road access visible from the highway parcel, what the end user will be,
I understand that to a point, you are building 30-some duplex style units, you're presuming in some ways that the market wants those. Maybe the market doesn't want that, maybe the housing market wants a different style of something. So you are taking you're creating an incentive of what's going in there by what you build, but you're not doing the same thing with the commercial. You're just leaving it open, so therefore it's the highest bidder, if storage comes in and is gonna pay you the most, and that's what's going in there regardless of what the benefit to the town is. Whereas if you build and you say, we're going to have this be rentable offices, we're gonna build an office building here. Now you're incentivizing these other types of businesses to come in.
Isn't by tax base the highest bidder user most beneficial to the town by that metric?
Maybe that's not the metric I care most about.
But by that token, I don't know that we'd have commercial zones in a town like Canterbury. I think the best use and the most use as we look around here, other than the municipal complex we're in, it's an awful lot of houses.
And we're taking one of our very rare commercial areas and making more housing.
But again, with the opportunity to add commercial, where it's to some degree subsidized by the housing piece of this. But again, I don't know, this parcel's been here for 50 years in its current subdivided state, right? More than that, when was it?
It was subdivided recently, but generally speaking, yes.
Alright, it seems like the two sort of big issues presently in front of us are density, total amount of units that we're gonna discuss as a board, and then whatever studies we're gonna want of the plan. Does that make sense, or anything else that we're overlooking at this point?
There was questions about design that came up in the last meeting. We haven't heard anything new on that.
You're talking about architectural design? We actually have some examples, I think by looking at it, you can kind of tell that we heard the emphasis on front porch, cause there are some front porches on there. We understand that there is the highly suggested farmstead alternative, within the zoning ordinance. And we provided some examples of what that could look like, and that's, I don't wanna say shot down, but that wasn't what was meeting the opinions of this board. And so we've kind of gone to just more generic kind of New England style houses, and we figured this would at least spark the conversation. Get some more details out of this board, so hopefully we can come up with a design.
You have a question
I don't know if I have a question or a statement, or
Yeah, you can go for it,
I've been to every single one of these meetings for the last 2+ years. And I'm a resident, obviously, I live in town, I'm speaking as a resident, I wanna be clear on that. I've read the back and forth from the planning board, the developer, the residents, everybody in this town, and it just seems we keep falling back on, it's a housing crisis, we need houses, we need this, we need. What I think we're failing to see is a great opportunity. Statewide, small towns like Canterbury are gonna be developed. It's happened in Bow, it's happened in Hopkinton, it's gonna happen in Warner, it's gonna move up. I think as a developer, you guys have an extraordinary opportunity to make an impactful development that resonates what a small town is. If you could potentially look past 34 units or whatever it is, or the, the tit for tat over the commercial and say, what fits this town the best? Is it 22, 20 units? Is it duplexes? Is it single family ranches for 55 and older? I just feel we're missing the point of the potential of this and the impact on the community, and something that could be extraordinary that you could use as a model for other communities that you guys work in. We're not Londonderry, we're not Milford, we're not Salem. That's not Canterbury. People move to this town because we like the quiet rural community. You could have a small rural community that echoes the sentiment of the town in there. I don't wanna call it greed, because you're business people, you wanna make money, that's what everybody wants to do. But if you potentially change the structure, maybe gave less houses and built a community, sidewalks, a pavilion space that kids can go play and meet each other, the playground. Turn that into a community garden, something that echoes the sentiment of the town. I think people would be more apt to listen to that and be here and get behind it, instead of this back and forth sort of, I don't even know what you call it. It's not frustrating, it's just I feel like it's a great opportunity, and we're getting hung up on things that if we emphasize more of what the town is, this project could be far more successful and really be a stepping stone for you guys down the future for developing in small towns. Small towns we don't move to towns for that, and it's not a knock on you guys, I totally understand you're business people and this is what you do, but I just feel like maybe if it was more centered on the ideals of the town and building out a community instead of duplexes, maybe there's more potential there for more residential than commercial. I don't know, I'm not on the planning board, but this is 3 years of hearing these meetings in the direction, and none of what's presented there ever seemed to be echoed by what we heard at the plan for tomorrow from the residents. So it's just, I guess I'm just airing a concern or a grievance, but that's all.
And I would add to what you said with the commercial road going to the back. That's gonna be busy no matter what, or busier, or I mean, maybe if it's storage units it won't be, but there will be traffic back and forth, and that is not a thing that's good for residential, quiet residential kids riding around. That's dangerous and not not community oriented.
I guess I don't know how to fully respond to that, and I respect the, I really respect that input of wanting the town to remain as Canterbury, right? I mean, that's why you guys are all residents here and so on. In coming up with this concept, the master plan was utilized, mostly related to the housing component of it, of supporting a mix of housing densities in Canterbury, prompting the use of cluster subdivisions and other zoning tools to increase the availability of housing, encourage the development of additional residential units in smaller, that are smaller and more affordable to accommodate downsizing seniors and young families. We believe we've listened to the master plan to come up with this concept, and then the commercial components, while in the future, we're trying to make that as ready to go as possible, so that way there is a tax base for Canterbury in the future to offset any perceived burdens by allowing young families into the town or allowing other families to downsize to a smaller unit. Maybe the parents downsize to one side of the duplex and the young family purchase their first home as the other half, and you end up with kind of a community aspect of the mother watches the grandchild, or the grandmother watches the grandchild while the young family goes to work. So while I do understand would it make sense if it's smaller, however, there is, like you said, there is a housing crisis. The town master plan has laid out what it wants, which I believe is voted on by the town residents, and we've purposely delayed this application a year purposely delayed this application here after conversations with the town and town staff, so that way we can match the master plan, or the most recent master plan.
You're picking part of the master plan that you're highlighting here.
There's other parts
Just
in
let's
it,
be clear about that.
there's other parts in it too that I could highlight where it wants mixed uses. And that's where we are doing our best to have the mixed uses, and I understand in a perfect world, there would be an office building ready to go right now, and at that point, we would build it, and it would be rented out before it's built, but that's not the world we live in right now. We have potential for the billboard that could go right now, but that still has some other work that needs to be done in the future, but we don't live in a perfect world, we don't live in a perfect society. We're trying to do our best to solve a problem and then meet what has been put before us.
What do you approximate one of these houses will go for?
I don't know that answer, I don't know if you've crunched that around.
Well, surely it's in some sort of calculus in terms of how many units you'd like to make money off of your investment, right?
The more units that are allowed to us, the lower the price of the housing will be. That's the simple math associated with it.
But you have no guarantee, you're not building affordable housing, in fact, you said, specifically called out, we are not calling this workforce or affordable housing, because that would imply that they are going to be affordable, but there's no guarantees that they will be, right?
No, they're not gonna be under any of those terms of arts in our statute. Again, the goal here is attainability, which is by using the density bonuses, having the opportunity to meet economies of scale. You can obviously pass those savings on. There are no cheap houses left in New Hampshire is the sad reality of the thing, and we are so far behind in building by any of the metrics that come out in any of the studies we've all reviewed. Again, part of the challenge here is we're trying to build something, we are trying to internalize all aspects of the master plan while also doing something with the land that our client owns here, and permitting's just incredibly challenging at this point, and I don't fault any of you for doing this. We talked about the challenges in the ordinance and the things that we've had rigorous debates trying to determine the best ways to parse. There's just nothing easy about building in New England anymore, we're not making more land, so I understand your concerns about how we use this land. But in terms of, there seems to be a hesitation that we're not going to build the commercial uses for this, so that we're maintaining a condominium share on something that we're not using. That's just a draw on the developer. The incentive is for us to build this well so it sells well. Either sell the build-to-suit parcels or rent them. All of this pushes the same direction, which leads to your concerns of let's have commercial tax base, which leads to your concerns of we do need to balance the community feel of this versus getting all of this done. The point of let's work with the whole master plan, which is again, a visionary document, not an operative document. We have met and worked hard with you again to parse the subdivision regulations here so that we can build something that complies with your town standards here. And it's not easy, and again, understand that there's a preference. I live in Bow, you're absolutely right, that Bow has developed a lot and that gave me an opportunity to live in Bow. But an interesting quote, Britain versus Chester, is that towns may not refuse to confront the future by building a moat around themselves and pulling up the drawbridge. I fully understand that you like Canterbury the way it is, and I don't fault you at all. I grew up in New Hampshire, I'm from Keene, I live in Bow. I like the fact that I open my back door and I see the woods. I get all of this. But the reality of the site we're using is that if you were to ask anybody, what's the most dominant feature of this property? We're all gonna say it's the biggest highway in the state. We have an opportunity where this is not gonna be the Shaker Village. It's next to the biggest highway in the state. We have an opportunity to allow people to live in Canterbury. You have schools that are in a decline, which is not to say the quality of the school is in a decline, but the population numbers are such that there are not as many people in schools as there once were. Your fire department has said that it's not gonna be an issue in terms of this, we can talk cisterns, we can do all of these things. But we are busting our butts to try to give a product, and we can talk about the looks of these things, etc. But trying to do a reasonable unit count so that we can provide attainable housing at a level where, yes, our client can use his property rights to make some money on this thing. But also it brings some new families, some new blood into Canterbury. And also trying to figure out, we can't predict the market, no one can. I can predict in a hot market that we're gonna be able to sell some housing units, but right now I've spent a lot of time in Manchester in the last year re-permitting office building space into residences. That's something that's happening in the tallest buildings in this state. I'd love to say that, oh, okay, work from home has gone away, everybody wants a new office building, we put an office building, but that's not what the market has said right now. So that's quite a soliloquy, and I apologize for monopolizing the time here, but we really, from the bottom of our hearts are working to build something that we can do, that we can give you a product that you as planning board members can look at and say, yeah, we were on the board when that happened, it ended up being a good project. We pushed back on the developer, we said no to this, they worked with us, they found some things, and the people that live there are very happy and are great members of our Canterbury community.
I would like to speak to the quote you shared, and I understand how hard you've been working at this, and I appreciate it. I think it is so hard because you are shoehorning this much residential in a commercial zone. I think that painting the board or Canterbury as anti-housing is a bit of a stretch. We've developed, clusters and things like that to try to attract more housing. The issue here is where?
Yeah.
Not what.
Mr.
So-
Chair, I don't.
Yeah, I'm, just for a minute, I think this sort of gets to the heart that when you talk, maybe before we get to the studies real quick, which is the total density and,
Can I speak?
I think, yeah, after I get through a second, I'll let you as well, Mitch. I think frankly, you all are sort of missing the point, and the point of what the residents who came here to talk about, citizens today, what Megan is talking about. You use the word reasonable unit count. This is the second plan now, where you have squeezed the absolute maximum amount, including a full density bonus of residential units you can fit, where you have made residency the primary focus of the entire plan with undefined commercial uses. So it is impossible for this board to evaluate how the mixed use itself could possibly be exemplary, because we have no mixed use to compare it to. We're talking about hypothetical uses with no way of knowing whether now there's a plan with 4 units sandwiched between a highway and a commercial driveway, and we don't know what the commercial driveway is going to be. I don't understand how we could ever look at a plan like this and say, this deserves a bonus on top of your prior maximum, when we can't evaluate the entire plan. This is not about reasonable unit count. You know, what I'm seeing is just 2 plans that look for the maximum. I thought, you know, I was a little bit happy when I looked at your plan at first and I saw the unit count went down. And I thought that was you coming back, you know, we're gonna reduce it. And then it turns out it's just because there was a mistake on the acreage and you've not actually made any proactive suggestion of reducing it. You haven't made any suggestions or proposed changes about the quality of the neighborhood. The change with moving those houses to the bottom looks like it was really just so that you could expand the open space to get above 50%. I mean, it's very frustrating. You talk about the master plan. Well, the master plan goes hand in hand with the fact that we have zones, and this is the commercial zone. And I get that there was an issue with our ordinance, and some amount of that is something that you're gonna be able to take advantage of with a primarily residential development in the commercial zone. But that doesn't mean that we have to sit and give, you know, bonus density and be happy that you have a plan that basically just squeezes everything you can out of it. So with that, I mean, ultimately, I think we need to figure out what we're interested in terms of the total maximum, since that's really the main thing that I see. Rich, would you like to speak to that, or any other comments?
I would. This is just an open-ended question. Was there any consideration, as was mentioned earlier, this is our commercial zone, and one of the very first meetings, the word ruse was used. I don't know if you remember that. People were talking about the subdivision and trying to, you know, in our commercial zone, I mean, the lack of mixed use. But was there any consideration in flipping where you get the commercial lot in the back and putting houses in the back and make a community down there? I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I worked hard on our master plan for the last almost 3 years. I put a lot of effort, a lot of work into that. I know what the town wants. They're not gonna like this, because there's no community, it's too sterile. That's not Canterbury, none of those pictures are. You have an opportunity here to take and make a community, a cluster development in the back of the lot, and push your commercial up front to generate the interest, the desire, the accessibility, having that construction going all the way to the back. I mean, would I let my 3-year-old ride their bicycle out in that road when traffic's going back and forth into the into the commercial zone? That's where the moms, the families, the dads, that's where your development should be, your residential. And your commercial should be up front with the big trucks or whatever you guys foresee. Storage, we've already got plenty of storage and we have problems. We have issues with those. We have non-residential people that are taking up residence in them, which creates an impact on our police force, creates a headache for, it just goes down the line. billboards, yeah, read our ordinance, I think, that'll be another discussion. But I don't know if there was any talk about, or initially, if you guys even considered flip-flopping, and you should be putting the houses in the back of the lot. That lot, you got 35 acres, put the houses back there, push the commercial development up to the front. That way you have a community, you don't have the traffic.
I keep coming back to gosh darn sidewalks.
Yeah,
Because we've been talking about the design for these houses from the beginning, and I know that something that has been brought up in almost every one of these meetings is like, why don't we have sidewalks? If you're gonna have a cul-de-sac like that, you need a sidewalk.
I mean, I can see,
And that seems like a silly petty little thing, but it's important.
to,
You gotta get the design right and you need a sidewalk.
I don't think it requires it, but I can't say definitively.
Why not sidewalks?
Mostly because it's an inner loop. I can agree that you could probably need sidewalks along this stretch of access for these 4 houses, but being an inner loop, you know your neighbor, it's not through traffic. You're at your destination, you're not speeding down the road.
So was it a design choice or a calculation choice? Does it affect your area to put in sidewalks?
It adds impervious area, which increases stormwater basins, and I would say that they're not needed for this loop.
So if people want to go to their neighbor's house for a barbecue, they either get in their car or they walk on the street.
Yes. And I would have concern with that if it was through traffic and not in a cluster neighborhood like it is.
I mean, there's gonna be more traffic on that cul-de-sac than my road sees in an entire day.
There will be traffic on that cul-de-sac, except for the farthest extent is here, and you're not gonna take this turn here and speed down the road to get to your house, and if you are, gonna refrain from the term that I would like to use, and your neighbors are gonna be pissed off at you, and it's gonna be addressed. The likelihood of someone speeding down this road is almost improbable. That's where I say I agree that that for these people to be connected to this community, a sidewalk could be required along here, or just a widened shoulder so that way you can step off of the edge of the pavement because of the commercial traffic, but not within the residential cluster.
I'm hearing a lot of reasons why sidewalks are not needed, but it's not really the question that I'm asking. Why would you not want to have a sidewalk?
Because they're not needed, it's more cost and it's more cost.
Maintenance, et cetera, throughout, it's not just development cost, it's homeowner association cost that gets passed on eventually as well. And again, I live in a loop road like this and we don't have sidewalks on it, I walk my dog on the road every night and you wave at your neighbors when the cars go by, it's.
Okay, well, I guess where I'm at, and interesting that the cost came up again, is that if the proposal's ultimately going to be based on that, and it seems like that's what I'm hearing, that ultimately the goal here is the maximum number of units, and whatever we can sell the commercial units for the most, but we don't have a plan for them. I think at the very least, we need to see a plan that is at the minimum with no density, which would be, I think with your revised calculation, 27 units of residential plus 2 commercial, if you're keeping ostensibly the same plan, which at least currently I've no reason to believe you're not. I can't speak for the board on the second piece, but at the very least, I would like to see that if you're going to have an undefined commercial use, that you are not trapping 4 houses in between a commercial driveway and an interstate highway, which may be a area you can lose to get you closer to 27. If you, it would be certainly nice, if you could find a way to use that area or some of the other area around those houses to show some community features or something that the people who would be living in those houses would use or enjoy, or a way to bring them together. I think, that would be appreciated, but in addition, and we'll talk about the studies and the engineering view, I guess I just don't see any way that I'm willing to go above the current maximum of 29 units. Sense of the board?
One other thing, just a side note, just one thing that I've noticed, I'm a science guy. The buffer, the tree buffer, that you have, the pine trees that are along 93. Those trees are in rough shape. They're gonna be dying soon. You're gonna lose your buffer.
There's a lot of new growth there, many.
Well, yes and no. But just a comment.
Mr. Chair, your question about the number, I don't feel that the base density calculation complies with ordinance, so I don't believe that number is.
Correct, yeah, we only took a sense of the board, we didn't vote on that.
And the
but-
reason for that?
We're ignoring whole sections of the density calculation required for the for the baseline density calculation.
And so I understand, do you mean that you don't know how many commercial units there are?
No, he's
I mean,
talking,
the baseline density calculation was not done following the ordinance.
Oh, the 4 sections.
This is what- yeah, we
Okay,
discussed
okay,
last
I
time.
understand. Then I wanna add to that similar or associated comment, which is the configuration of the commercial use in the back of the parcel. If there's going to be 2 businesses, well, if there's 5, I guess I would put it this way, if there's 5 acres and this is a 1 acre, this is 1 acre zoning, right? 1 acre zoning, and that's what the count is based on. If there's 5 acres of commercial, then that's 5, I don't know the word, units, I guess. And so instead of, I can't do the count in my head, but if there's 5 acres of commercial, that's 5 units and not 1 unit. And putting aside how you share a vote in the condominium section, arrangement, that should be 5, not 1. And sorry, I don't know if that's.
Again, respectfully, Sam's first letter was November 19th, 2024, asking nearly that same question. We finally, at the last meeting, obviously at length, which we appreciated, got to resolutions of the board. I don't know that they're binding, but you'd hope that at some point we can rely on the calculations that have been discussed at length, and the board took their votes last meeting. I certainly hope that those aren't now going to get reopened after we've relied on them.
they were, and I think we were pretty clear last time, just a sense of the board. I mean, you have the unenviable position of being first, and I guess you'll be the last person to apply for a cluster subdivision under that version of the ordinance. The board has to act on an application ultimately, and we will, and that will, that's when we have to make a determination. Greg?
Yes.
Did you say something, were you trying to speak?
No,
Sorry, okay.
sorry, what?
So, you know, anyone could change their mind. I'm not personally inclined to, but the point at where we're at least, it doesn't feel like you're willing to make any concessions to, you know, your bottom line effectively. And, you know, across the state, I mean, every subdivision doesn't come in and propose the absolute maximum. You have the sense of the board on that one piece, but in terms of, you know, the commercial uses, we're sort of left with that whole. Like we're just retreading at this point, but
Yeah, so,
yeah,
I understand where you're coming from. We left last meeting, I think feeling pretty positive that we were moving forward and that we really had two main items to hopefully receive the density bonuses. We recognize that that's, there's may written in the regulations instead of shall, so the board has their discretion to do so, and it was up to us to prove that it was exemplary to receive those density bonuses. And we took that as, showing that those commercial lots are developable with the exception of the market camp bases. So in no way did we have at least I walked away without the full understanding that the intent of the board was to reduce it with the exception of, we were looking for, trying to prove to you that this is an exemplary subdivision, and I think we're hearing it today that we fell short of those directives. So this wasn't, again, we're not.
yeah, I don't think it was intentional. You know, there's always communication issues in how people understand. What I at least attempted to communicate, you know, last month was, it is the commercial zone. We're supposed to be looking at it from that. That is what the town's voters, they don't vote on the master plan. They do vote on the zoning ordinance, and that's where they want commercial development. And if there were a plan with more commercial use or fixed ones, and, you know, I've seen plenty of developments in the past in other communities where it's, here's how we're gonna integrate particular commercial uses with housing, and they make sense because this type of business, you know, people can come, they can use A, B, and C, whatever it is. And that board looking at those goes, oh, this makes sense, right? Whatever the Steeplegate Mall development is going to look like, they'll know this is how people are gonna move through this entire area and what it's gonna look like. It's still just two undetermined lots, and even with what they might be, that's not something we're gonna see. There could, you know, be a proposal with more commercial uses or more of a focus and less of a focus on residential, but again, we're limited with the ordinance as much as you.
Yeah, and I more to say that as basically trying to say that we didn't come in here today basically saying, you told us to do less and we didn't listen to you. I heard it, I guess, from the other side of that perspective of trying to show that the commercial uses are there, so.
Yeah, and certainly it's, the board has to make a decision ultimately, and I can't speak for the whole board. At some point, they will have to make a final decision on density, and if there's going to be a density bonus, at least I personally, it's my vote, this is not the type of project that I see warranting any bonus as being exemplary, but there could be an alternative proposal I'm not considering. Other board members may feel differently.
I think one other thing worth considering here that our client just raised is that by building the infrastructure here, that does get us one step closer to those commercial uses, because right now it's virgin land that nobody's gonna build to the back of this. So we have that opportunity to look for. And I also, in thinking about, I've been doing land use law for 10 years now, and looking at these things where everyone likes to design so that something comes out and is mixed use in the way that downtown Concord is. So you have Bagel Works on the bottom floor and a couple levels of residential above it. But what those take and have been almost undevelopable in New England over to Massachusetts before coming back to New Hampshire is that unless you have already a dense mass of people, Steeplegate Mall has the people all around, et cetera, and it's gonna bring in large numbers of residences to go with all of this. You try to create these walkable communities where it's the first floor and the upstairs. But here, we're in a spot where you're going to have to drive to get to it, and it fundamentally doesn't work. So the idea has always been, okay, we'll have the coffee shop, we'll have a dry cleaner, and then you go through COVID and work from home, and I try to do as little dry cleaning as you can, because it's exorbitantly expensive and nobody wants to do it. All these ideas and best laid plans of you're really parceled out, here's this, we're gonna put this, and that will make it so that the residential users can build these and keep these there. It's unfortunately not borne out to work, so I understand your point, if I had the ability to add a.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Canterbury's zoning ordinance intended a development like that. I think it was a mistake, frankly, in the ordinance that you're able to have a massive residential subdivision there. But it is what the ordinance says.
Is this
and
massive?
This is massive. You
Relative to
should
Canterbury, yeah.
drive through town and see what the average lot size is and see what the types of structures are and see how the town is set up. And this does not have, Canterbury spirit. And again, the ordinance is what it is. The version that's in play is in play. We have some disagreements, but I think at least the majority of the board, you can go forward with this type of mixed use. But what is in our control is density bonus. What is in your control, more than our control, is how you design this development so that when all of you get to walk away from this project, it's actually a development that people wanna live in and appreciate and say, hey, it would be nice to maybe change our zoning ordinance and have more of those instead of, thank God they stopped it before there was a second one of these. Because those are two possible outcomes and we really can't control that, and I don't think can force you to put in sidewalks, for example. But I hope I speak for the board, we would certainly appreciate it if you would, add things or propose things or ways that this development would go in that do increase that community feel, that do speak to really what Canterbury is and do tend to fit our town and a rural farming community, which is what Canterbury is. You said vacant land, well, it's vacant now, but it was a farm, it was a commercial use that, stopped being a commercial use. And, now the proposal is maybe a coffee shop and a commercial lot that who knows what it'll be if it's ever sold.
So, I guess, short of dropping it down to baseline density to get density bonus, is there aspects that the board would, and I know sidewalk was mentioned as an example, moving it to the back, and I can take another look at it, I know I looked at it at one point, but it was very high level. Is there aspects that could get added to this plan, short of building the commercial today, that would make the board consider at least one of the density bonuses? And we're just trying to have an open dialogue to where we can work together, because this is the plan that we want, you want something different,
I'll say one thing and then I'll let other people speak. I guess I just wish that some of the other features or things that you could add were in the plan already and not essentially coming forward as a piece of leverage of here's the most bare bones development we can have and I wanna leverage little upgrades for an extra lot. But Megan?
with respect, the last meeting was the first time we made like real progress, so now that we're here in the second one in like the thick of it.
Correct, and I know, and there's, plenty of room for other plans, but I'm just gonna pause for a minute, I'm gonna let other people speak, I feel like I've been speaking a lot, so, Megan?
So we've had a lot of these meetings, and for a while, to me, they felt like you coming in earnest to figure out what Canterbury wants, what we're looking for. And it's starting to really feel like this is more you trying to get advanced rulings out of us to maximize the most you can get out of this project. It's feeling more extractive and less collaborative. Because what you're coming back with is not demonstrating that you heard any of what we said. It's continually going back to, okay, how can we get more? How can we get more from you guys? What else can we do to get more? And it's not feeling as it did in previous sessions where I thought that this was,
Again, respectfully, the last meeting was the first meeting that got through the first hurdle of what is baseline density and how to calculate that, so. I wanna work together and be collaborative, but that was the first step that we needed to get through. I know we've been through a lot of meetings to get to that point, so now that we're into the second one, and we got through that first hurdle, we're open to this dialogue.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a lawyer, I know there are lawyers in the room here, but there was nothing statutorily that required us to give you that density calculation in advance, correct?
Correct.
Right, our job is to spell out any missing submittals, not settle every interpretive dispute that may arise in an actual application.
I believe
So
there's
that
some
was
RSA
generous
where the
for us
board,
to
where the
do.
planning board is supposed to be, work constructively with the applicants.
Again, it's constitutional as interpreted by the Supreme Court on this, is the New Hampshire Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court requires towns to provide assistance to their citizens, and this, the landowner is a citizen, and that the measure of assistance certainly includes informing applicants not only whether their applications are substantively acceptable, but also whether they are technically in order. So we have a ream of letters asking to try to get to these density calculations, and again, we've now come to a point where I'm hoping that's water under the bridge, but again, I do this several nights a week at this point, and I don't know a developer, and I sort of apologize, and it's too bad that it's somewhat offended you that we've designed to the maximum level of what the ordinance provides. But that's generally speaking a standard operating procedure, so that you say, okay, we could get to this based on these things, and the board says, okay, this is not exemplary if you do it this way, and that is our collaborative opportunity to have your opinions and for us to go back to the drawing board, not necessarily to scrap this plan, but hopefully at this point, more than a year in, to tweak these things to get to a point where you say, okay, those facades are more Canterbury, okay, this is, you heard what we said on this. And again, to be colloquial, it was sort of a year before I got brought in of these guys pounding their heads on the table trying to figure out what we could do to design this thing. So that you're frustrated with this plan, again, and not to put us in a bad negotiating position, but it was frustrating for us to not know what we could design because the ordinance had so many loose ends in this thing, and we have that misfortune of being the first people and you having the difficult position of being the first to interpret this thing that was written with best intentions. But I'm hoping that we're gonna close this meeting at some point tonight and we can all take a deep breath, that you'll keep an open mind towards this, and that I know that Keith and his team, we're big boys here. We're not gonna take offense to the fact that you don't think that what is roughly our first, we have a bunch of beta testing and this is our real first draft, isn't what you're looking for. We have an opportunity to ideate on this. This is an opportunity for us to collaborate to get something done here that hopefully you're bound, like you said, to what your ordinance has that you can choose to give and what you can't choose to give. And we're bound by the fact that you told us we're not exemplary tonight, and that hurts a little bit, but we're gonna come back harder and try to get this thing done. We don't wanna stop talking with you all about this.
Alright.
I'll give you a positive. I don't like the I don't know about the style, but ranches, I know that there is a definite need for single floor housing in Canterbury.
Okay.
As the population ages, it's hard to, we're trying to find a home for my mother-in-law, everything is multiple stories, it's very difficult to find in this area, so there you go,
The issue with
there's a positive.
So,
they're like 30 to 35% more costly to build a ranch, so that's why we try to stack it so it's affordable. That's a fact.
That makes no sense to me, but
Foundation.
So I was gonna say is-
foundation's
maybe what a good thing to do here, based on the time, is if there's any other questions from the board for the applicants or suggestions for the board for things to consider for a revised plan, let's do that now. We'll open it up to public, and then the board can discuss in terms of our view internally, but separate from a back and forth, and we can go for it, yeah.
I think that, Sam, I think you sort of assumed away the basic issue. And I want you to know that I like, as opposed to some of my colleagues, the residential plan. I think that's a great plan. I think I agree that it's a little bit ugly as proposed, but this concept, I like that, and I don't mind it, but this is a, this is a commercial zone. And if what I see happening here is, and I used the past month to talk to as many constituents as I could come across about this. And there's two ways of looking at this, and I think the way you've proposed this is build it and don't come, sort of like the baseball movie, right? And it's been that way for, there's no commercial development for 40 years, and so, maybe some residential here will bring commercial. I understand that. But there's this risk, and I think it's a significant risk, that by building commercial, by building residential, the commercial will never come. Now, on West Road, the front lot, probably commercial will come, but on the back lot, I don't know, or I'm worried that it won't. And I think my concern is, one, the configuration of it with commercial in the back. I think that probably is a big impediment. Second, by selling 25 or 30 or whatever the number is, residentials, you're creating a NIMBY problem, and whatever the condominium documents say, one well-heeled, committed resident is going to be able to, with a lawyer, will be able to delay and maybe hinder commercial development from ever going into the back. So, it was my word, a ruse, and I think this is a ruse. And if there were a credible entrepreneur at your table saying, this is what I'm going to do, with a credible timeline, rather than some vague promise that maybe someday they'll come, that would be the condition to me, long before we start talking about density bonuses and calculation and all that stuff, is I wanna see the commercial development either with whatever kind of assurance works for you, whether that's, a person standing there putting their money on the line, or whatever works for you. I wanna see that fifth person at your table who is the entrepreneur with money behind them saying, this is what my commercial proposal. And so until I see that, I can't really count how many, how many actual units there are. B, I don't want to be proven wrong, 40 years from now, and there's still no commercial.
You wanna be proven wrong tomorrow.
Pardon me?
You wanna be proven wrong tomorrow.
Well, what I'm concerned about is that we will have effectively, and I used this word a month ago, rezoned this beyond our authority. And the voters told us that this is commercial, and we are making it residential, and it will never be commercial. And that is that's the, I can't, for me, I can't vote for this until I see a commercial proposal either before
the residential or simultaneous. And that's because it's commercial zone. And so, you know, maybe flipping it would work, whatever you wanna do. I think this violates our ordinance.
Chair, to that point, I have a question, I guess it might
Yeah.
be more for you, is there anything, so say hypothetically this passes, get the residential in, is there anything that prohibits from selling off that commercial area to someone else?
Yeah, it can't be subdivided.
It cannot be, okay,
You cannot subdivide it, but they'll sell the condo unit. to
right,
someone,
okay, but they
presumably,
had said something
yeah, or
about
could.
the town could buy that land, and so I thought, wait, I didn't think.
Yeah,
Join
you could buy the
condo.
unit, but you can't subdivide the land.
Well, they can subdivide it right today,
Right, separate from the condo.
separate from all this, right?
And to Joshua's point, I don't agree with the word assurance, but priority, like it's very clear commercial is not the priority here, in a commercial zone, that's what it is.
Scott, do you have any questions, comments, or suggestions you wanna make to them before we?
So the only thing that came to mind, and I think has already been said, I wish you'd looked at that back parcel for your houses. One thing to remember is you have an active gun club directly across West Road from where your houses are. So by putting that housing development in the back, you'll create some distance between you and that gun club. I've been in communities before where housing developments have gone up, adjacent to active gun clubs, and it seems to never work out. So, something to consider.
I think you ought to put the existence of the gun club into the deeds, so that nobody can ever say they didn't know.
I agree with you,
Yeah,
completely.
they've been here.
Logan, I was gonna go through a line, but
Oh,
we'll jump.
I didn't know that you had a plan.
No worries, I just wanna make sure everyone has a chance to.
So, I almost aside from the issues of this being in a commercial zone, although I do agree, it would be very interesting to see what this would look like with the residential placed at the other end and all the commercial up front. When I think about what would make for an exemplary housing development in Canterbury, or really frankly anywhere, what I wanna see is things that make it a community. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm being a little petty about the sidewalks, but I do think we need sidewalks. But also it'd be nice to see things that are, say, community spaces, like, not just, like, yes, we've got a whole bunch of open space, but like, what if there was some space that was kind of, clearly designated as a park or a playground, or, some kind of community space within, like, the housing development, like, those are the sorts of things that to me make for an exemplary development over, an ordinary one, is one that really thinks about the lives of the people in there, as well as how it fits into the town, what it looks like alongside the rest of the town. I certainly, am not a fan of ticky-tacky boxes, and I think that you have an opportunity to design something that looks like it belongs in Canterbury here. I hope that we do see that.
The whole center field though is, wide open for walking through and walking dogs and all that.
Yeah, I've walked through it,
It's what,
it's full of ticks.
Yes, it is.
I don't think that meets the definition of community space in the way that I'm thinking of it.
You're good, yeah, Greg, next, and then I'll go to you, Rich, after. You said Rich, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think I hit, I just wanna emphasize that, by flipping it, looking at the back, create something, a sense of community back there, rather than trying to put as many houses that you can to keep the cost down,
Right, but they have to sell too, so.
Yeah,
these
I
things
understand.
cost money, who's
I
gonna buy 'em?
I understand, there's a balance. But it's just, right now, it's just, if we just create this sterile cookie cutter housing development, that's not Canterbury, that's not what we're looking for here. This is,
I think one more, I know we made a lot of comments, sorry Brenda, but
That's
just to the point that you just made, Keith, I hear you, I understand. You paid a certain amount for this money, you chose to buy a commercial zone. So So I don't have the sympathy for how much the houses are gonna cost as much, because you have got a residential area and you probably would not be seeing the kind of back and forth if this was a residential zone.
To that point though, we didn't make up this ordinance that allows residential in commercial zones. I understand your point that it's zoned commercial
Alright,
related to the ordinance.
I got a piece. I'm gonna close this portion. Any members of the public who wanna speak at this point? Is good, alright. So, board only at this point. Certainly I'd expect, cause at a minimum, we'll need to see another plan. Presumably, you know, and there could be alternatives. I will say, and I hope I speak for the board, that we'll all look at any future plan with fresh eyes, certainly, and evaluate whatever that plan is based on what's in the plan. In terms of studies, Greg, what I'd suggest is we should talk, and if we wanna use like the engineer from regional planning, that's fine, but basically just get them on standby to be able to do it when we see a new plan fairly quick, so we're not,
Obviously too early for, if you
Right.
don't know what it is, you
right,
can't
but
do
we
it.
can,
But I think it would be very helpful to have both code compliance and engineering
Okay.
at least.
and I personally am fine with leaving it to DOT, and
On the
they'll deal with that, and I think they'll address that
And
on
is
their
it
end.
DOT because West Road is, I mean, I know some roads are state and town and some are in between. Is that the reason this is one of those that's the state's in charge of the?
I believe so, and it's with the, you know, it's directly off of that exit ramp off of I-93. City team, that's the entrances.
And that's what makes it a state driveway permit rather than a
What-
town?
Do you know what the designation of West Road, I was pretty sure it was a
It's a state road.
state road, I just forget what its number is.
State road, I don't even know if it has an actual number, but it's under state jurisdiction. One, because of what you just said at the on and off ramp there, but it also goes all the way to, and.
132.
132, thank you.
Did you want something about fire safety or?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest, Brendan, is that we do give the fire chief also a chance to.
We can let them know that's coming and we'll see a new plan, but we can tentatively let them know what the existing plan is, see if they
Yeah,
have
and-
suggestions or recommendations.
If I could take a minute,
Yeah.
I guess I would like to plant the seed at this point. We've talked before about residential sprinklers, and the difference with the development here versus a lot of places you've developed is your fire department. This is a town that is served by a volunteer fire department. New construction, which I assume you'll be doing, burns faster, hotter, and is more deadly than most of the homes that are here already. So the fire department has less time to get there, less time to perform rescues, and the fire is growing bigger with each minute that passes. This development, as you proposed it, is very, very dense. So fire out of control can easily spread from one house to the next house to the next house. So there is, none of our mutual aid departments will be able to get there quickly. It would be Concord and Tilton Northfield, so they both got a ways to come, so, my opinion is that a cistern and residential sprinklers is the way to go for this development.
Okay,
Thank you, Brendan.
appreciate it, Scott. Where did this? So, to your earlier question, in the same way that, you know, we have to apply the ordinance at the final point, I don't think density bonus is off the table. We have to look at whatever the plan ultimately is, and, you know, my comments are largely based on this plan. We'll see what you have, you know, if it comes back where it's just, you know, down to the cap, and it's largely the same, I think you know my opinion, but the board would have to vote, obviously, so. Are you good with 30 days for,
I think two comments. I think you mentioned potential playground, community areas, is that something that would be amendable to it being within the open space areas? Or am I opening up another can of worms here that?
I don't think it's necessarily a can of worms, and I think it could work. I think part of the problem with your current design, at least as I see it, is that the majority of your open space happens to be a wetland, which is not particularly usable by people. I think that's part of why the town's voters changed the requirements, that you can't include that much wetland in the open space. But there's plenty of area on that lot, so if you find some creative ways where you can keep a lot of the units you want, but you can create more of a community feel. I'm sure that's something that the board's gonna look at, and we're gonna evaluate that when we look at the proposal.
And then when it comes to engineering, engineering and reg review, study, I would just ask the board if you, not that we can expedite that in any way, but typically in my experience, it takes some time to get a quote from them, then money go into escrow, and then, so it's.
What I was kind of considering is that I'll reach out and start that process now, but not to have them look at a plan now, so that hopefully if we get closer to a plan we're both on board with, we can do that as quick as possible, because I want to be cognizant of your time.
Yes, I appreciate that.
And I know it's been mentioned before, that school impact,
That's done within the fiscal study, and if it helps the board understand the unit count and how it affects the school, we'd be probably happy to issue it at this time, like when the next plan gets revised and submitted. So we'll update that in accordance with that plan and submit it concurrently with that plan.
and condominium documents would be submitted with that thing.
I think that seems premature. Yeah. Again, just because it's my hours going into it, I don't wanna charge them to then revise it a bunch of times.
But we can at least make agreements to those condominium documents of what type of language is expected of the board to protect the commercial interests and that type of stuff, kind of like maybe an overview of the intent, almost a letter of intent of the condo docs.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask the board, I certainly am open if they wanna bring alternative plans, and they don't have to necessarily do a full plan set for every alternative. Is that something that, well, if you would be open to, that if there are some different designs or different ways that you can use it, where you're not spending all the time on the other sets, but we can see maybe other ways to show community development or a way to reach a. Yeah, okay,
Definitely.
Question. Greg had some concerns about the baseline calculation, did we resolve those?
so we, last month, we took a vote, a sort of sense of the board of how do we calculate baseline density, and there's the word density, and then when you go to 5.1, there's sections that talk about minimum acreage and then setbacks. Where's my 5.1? And I forget if it was 5.2 or 4.3, I think it was maybe 4.3.
Yeah, I remember this whole
So
discussion.
so I think the
That's-
board gave its sense, which
Okay.
is, we're looking just at acreage. But, if Joshua, who disagrees, convinces us, it's an open question until we rule on it, but
My point is
you'd have
that
your work
this-
cut out for you, Lisa. I think my position is,
My point is that all these parts of this article were voted on by the town, and we don't have the authority to waive them. We have the authority to waive parts of the regulation, but not parts of the ordinance.
so. Mixed views, we gave our sense last month, and,
Oh.
theoretically.
I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a stray question that had gone unanswered.
Okay. Thank you. Sam, anything else tonight before we move off of this?
I'm sure there's plenty, but I don't think for tonight, so.
Well, I appreciate everyone's patience, not, an easy meeting necessarily, but, you all handled it professionally. I appreciate that. I look forward to seeing, what you have in 30 days.
Thank you.
And again, we appreciate the board, you do live here, you're trying to do something that you can be proud of in your role as civil servants, and we do appreciate that as well.
Alright, So, we normally do move to continue to a date certain, so what's the fourth Tuesday in September, we're in August still?
Mr. Chair, how are we on statutory requirement to make a ruling within a certain number of days?
We're not at it. We're at the next one.
September 23rd.
Okay.
Isn't that our special meeting for some, it starts at 6 o'clock?
That's the first one, right?
Yeah, it starts at 5:30 and then that way there's room to do all the listening session stuff and then at 7 the regular meeting starts.
It's at 5:30, not 6.
5:30,
5:30.
So is that the date?
yes, so,
23rd.
September 23rd, 7 PM, it's the normal time. So, get a motion to continue to that date and time,
So moved.
second,
Second,
all in favor?
I,
Aye. Alright. Thank you all.
So our next meeting is the 9th. That's
Correct.
regular time.
Thank you very much, take care.
We ready to move on? I got a call from a constituent, about an unrelated issue, and I realized I don't have an up-to-date, contact information sheet. Mine was from 2024, and I didn't know how to give, the phone number of our chair, because I don't have his phone number. So maybe I lost it, or it was never produced, but I don't have an up-to-date contact information.
Alright. We can definitely do that, I can circulate an email, but in the short term, my cell phone, which is probably the best way to reach me, is 603-706-2768.
Everyone.
I've got a question about the contact info sheet. Is that, are people comfortable with their phone numbers being given out? Like the .gov email I give out whenever somebody asks, phone numbers on there. Is that something people are okay with?
I'm okay with that
I'm okay, but
internally, not.
Also, this was something we're not supposed to distribute outside of us, right?
Yeah, it was an internal thing.
Okay, I thought you said you were giving phone numbers to a constituent.
Well, constituents wanted to talk to our chair, and I gave an email, the .gov email, but if you don't want me to.
You can share my phone number, it's still the best way to reach me, and yeah. If they text, they can do it anytime, and I'll ignore them if it's a time that's, 2 in the morning or something.
Yeah, this last one was
It was
December of 24.
December 24, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the one I have.
Yeah, so we're different.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
I missed last meeting, I was in Colorado, but I noticed that there was some work divvied up. Is there anything you'd like me to work on in terms of presenting?
Yeah, we put you in charge of all of it.
Did you? That's not what the,
But you-
that's not what the minutes said.
In charge of something, not in charge, but,
You know, the minutes aren't
Right.
necessarily correct.
where was my list?
Was I assigned something? Didn't
So,
see that.
I
Oh,
think it was.
I think we
can
left you
choose
off
what
and you can
want.
pick.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see it in the minutes.
So there'll be,
Yep.
unless I'm misreading my own notes, 3 sections at the 23rd meeting at 5:30. And it'll start with open discussion and people can come around, and there'll be some people from regional planning commission at 3 different stations and some of us.
My
80
distinct recollection is Megan can decide where she wants to go.
Yes, so ADUs was gonna have Scott and Logan, mixed use was gonna have Rich and myself, and cluster development was gonna have Greg and Josh. You can pick which one interests you or which one you wanna
You
be
can
involved
take
in.
my place.
And then the other piece, where put my notes we had talked about some ordinances with the goal of using the 9th. So I'm gonna get some draft of some simpler ordinance, so I think it was data center and I'm blanking, I have my list, but and I'll circulate those soon.
Okay, I'll volunteer for a cluster, that's amenable to Josh and Greg.
Oh, yeah,
We used to want this.
yeah, I was worried about doing that.
So, I mean,
Oh.
you don't have to have,
I'll take the
you don't have to have
spicy one, it's
a
fine.
presentation, but we sort of just envision like an open discussion of different topics. If people have any proposals or suggestions for maybe ordinance changes, you can write them down and bring them back and we can talk about those. Otherwise, just, engage and see what people are interested in with, what are they concerned with.
So after the group, you're filling in Megan there, this guy from, Scott, is that his name, from Housing New Hampshire, was gonna do a short presentation.
George.
George, right. And then we were gonna talk about maybe doing a circle, as you would suggest, a circle talking, if the group is small enough, if that works out.
Right.
Yeah,
So we can kind of play it by ear. If there's a lot of people and there's good discussion, we can keep going with the stations and delay the other piece. If there's not, we'll move on.
Minutes?
Minutes.
Yeah, I turned into a pumpkin at 9 o'clock, so.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to take up sludge, so, any suggested changes to the minutes that you received, Cal?
Motion to
Sorry, I have
approve.
one, line 212.
What number?
Where 212 and 213, Brendan was talking about, it just, his last comment was something to the effect that the baseline density calculation is what is critical or is what is essential or something like that.
Line 212, it says, well, I'll start at 211. Brendan agreed to discuss it after the 9:23 public input session. He felt that even a small bonus is valuable to the developers, so upping it may not be necessary.
But he also said that the baseline density calculation was what was critical, is my recollection. Do you recall that, or?
I would have to go back to the video to be sure.
I have no recollection of anything I've said,
Brendan.
yeah. But both of those sound like something I could have said, yeah.
Do you feel that this is
I think what you wrote is fine, and I'm good with that, so I don't feel strongly about changing it.
any other?
Motion to move the minutes.
Is there a second? Alright, all in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Alright, everyone good with not doing anything with contaminant materials, and we'll move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Alright,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Alright,